Hello everyone, Rachel here. I've never seen such a reaction after the launch of a major Xbox game as there was with Hellblade 2. The gaming community is divided right down the middle. On one side, you've got the die-hard fans of the first game, and on the other, the skeptics who probably haven't played it and are observing this new release with a mix of curiosity and doubt. This skepticism isn't surprising, especially after the closure of several major Xbox studios this year, among which Arcane Austin and Tango, with fears that Ninja Theory might be next. Even in my previous video on Hellblade, instead of engaging with the game's content, many comments were focused on rumors about Ninja Theory closing. And this brought me to think that it's really depressing to see how the conversation has shifted away from a game's merits and what makes it special. It seems like this is a sign of our time in which the studio gossip matters more than the artistic product. But let me tell you up front, I believe that this is not a game that should cost people their jobs. In fact, Hellblade 2 sets a new high bar for narrative and graphics in future AAA titles. So did I like it? Yes and no. To explain why, we need to get into the details of the plot. Fair warning, there will be spoilers. In the 9th century, Orcadian warrior Senua willingly lets herself be captured by Northman slavers to seek justice for her enslaved people. After a fierce storm destroys the slave ships, she washes ashore in Iceland. Guided by both the harrowing voices of the Furies and the dark memories of her abusive father, Senua captures the slaver leader Thorgestur, using him as a guide to reach his home at Borgarviki. En route, they stumble upon a settlement laid to waste by the Draugr, savage, cannibalistic barbarians. Senua rescues a prisoner, Fargrimr sensing his significance to her quest. Despite a sudden attack by the giant Iltauga resulting in a deadly rock slide, Senua and Fargrimr escape. Recognizing a change in Thorgestur, she frees him, believing he has good in him. The group then makes its way to Fargrimr's village, now teetering on the edge of ruin due to repeated assaults by Iltauga. Fargrimr shares that the Askia volcano's eruption has shattered the barriers between their world and that of the giants, causing these colossal beings to invade. The town of Borgarviki, desperate for peace, sacrifices slaves to appease these giants. Convinced that Senua can communicate with otherworldly beings because of the voices she hears, Fargrimr sends her to seek wisdom from the Hidden Folk, elusive, godlike entities dwelling deep underground. The Hidden Folk reveal that the eruption has brought about severe famine and societal strife, prompting desperate measures by those in power. Among these desperate is Ingun, a woman who, in a bid to protect her child and herself, sought power from the volcano, transforming into the giant Iltauga. Senua confronts Iltauga, manages to turn her back into stone by invoking her true name and returning her infant's bones, thus breaking the spell over her. Witnessing Senua's resolve and power, Thorgestur pledges his allegiance to her cause. Their next challenge brings them to Barwarvik, where the community leader, Astrir, implores them to eliminate Shavarisi, another giant who has been ravaging their coasts. Shavarisi was once a respected man who, overwhelmed by fear after the volcanic eruption, betrayed Astrir's father, leading to his death. The community, out of retribution, exiled him, and he was transformed by the sea into a giant. Despite their victory over the Draugr who attack Barwarvik, Senua is burdened by guilt for the destruction they bring. As they travel through the sinister Yarnver forest to return to Borgarviki, fear and doubt plague her companions, but Senua's newfound strength and understanding guide them safely through. At Borgarviki, Astridr and Fargrimr free slaves prepared for sacrifice while Senua and Thorgestur confront his father, the Hodi. The Hodi, desperate to maintain his grip on power, has manipulated the giant threat to his advantage. Upon discovering the freed slaves and facing the impending approach of the giant tyrant, the Hodi captures Senua for a sacrificial offering. In the ensuing chaos, Thorgestur challenges his father, and Senua is drawn away by the Hidden Folk, who disclose that Tyrant was once a noble leader, corrupted by the power vested in him. Returning to reality, Senua witnesses Thorgestur fatally wounded by his father. With his dying breath, Thorgestur cautions Senua against killing the Hodi, suggesting it would only perpetuate the cycle of fear and control. Senua heeds this advice, instead exposing the Hodi's deceptions and turning the villagers against him. Tempted to assume his role and control the village through fear, Senua ultimately rejects this path, embracing the positive memories of those she has rescued, and recognizing that her destiny is not bound by her father's shadow or by vengeance. There are many themes that deserve to be explored in this game. For a start, there is an accurate portrayal of mental health issues. Senua's hallucinations and the mythical elements are so carefully depicted that they often might blur the line between reality and fantasy, leading the player to wonder what is genuinely happening versus what is imagined by Senua. There are rich references to Norse mythology which show an added level of care from the writers but could overwhelm players unfamiliar with these myths. But I believe that two themes guide the entire game. The first is the Master-Slave Dialectic, and the second is religion and the concept of bad faith. The Hegelian Master-Slave Dialectic is applied to the dynamic between the main antagonist, the Hodi, and his son, Thorgestr. The Master-Slave Dialectic begins with two self-conscious individuals encountering each other, each seeking recognition, leading to a struggle where one asserts dominance as the master, and the other submits as the slave, either with fear or with manipulation. In the game, the Hodi initially takes on the role of the master, exerting control over his son through manipulation and the village through fear, using the threat of the giants to maintain his power. His son, Thorgestr, assumes the position of the slave, living under his father's oppressive rule and carrying out his commands. Yet in the game, he increasingly gains self-awareness and questions the legitimacy of his father's authority. The master, in this case the Hodi, relies on the slave for recognition in labor, while the slave, through labor and facing fears, questions authority and begins to gain self-awareness and freedom. This creates a dialectical process where true self-consciousness and freedom emerge from the slave's experiences. Thorgestr's journey with Senua represents his transformative labor. As he confronts the giants, the devastation in the villages, he starts to see the cracks in his father's authority and the truth behind the constructed narratives used to control the people. Over time, the slave becomes the true master, while the master becomes enslaved by their dependence on the slave's recognition. By the end of the game, Thorgestr, having faced his fears and gained new insights through his journey with Senua, challenges his father's dominance. The Hodi, on the other hand, becomes increasingly dependent on the fear and recognition he commands from the villagers, which is ultimately shown to be a fragile construct. In their final confrontation, the Hodi's control is revealed to be based on lies and manipulation, and Thorgestr's newfound self-awareness helps him realize his own power and autonomy. Senua's support further highlights the shift in power dynamics, as Thorgestr transitions from being a submissive son to someone who embodies self-consciousness. The oppressive forces, both internal and external, that once acted as masters are now seen as constructs that can be overcome, illustrating the ultimate dialectical reversal. The second concept in the game is closely tied to the existentialist philosophy of Jean-Paul Sartre, particularly his concepts of bad faith and the embrace of authentic existence. Sartre's concept of bad faith involves self-deception to avoid the anxiety associated with absolute freedom and responsibility. This can be seen in how the villagers and the Hodi perceive the giants. They attribute natural disasters like earthquakes, tsunamis, and blizzards to vengeful giants, thereby creating a narrative that shifts responsibility away from themselves and onto these mythical beings. This self-deception creates a false sense of security and order, allowing the villagers to avoid confronting the real causes of their suffering. The Hodi in the game uses religious beliefs to control the villagers, creating a narrative of vengeful giants to instill fear and maintain power. This manipulative use of religion and faith reflects Sartre's idea of bad faith, where individuals or institutions create false narratives to manipulate others and avoid confronting the reality of their own actions. It is an interesting narrative that invites the player to reflect on how religion or any ideology can be misused in real life to manipulate and control people. Senua's struggle against the giants can be viewed as a battle against bad faith. The giants are not just physical adversaries, but also manifestations of the villagers and the Hodi's fears and self-deceptions. By fighting these giants, Senua is not only confronting her own fears, but also challenging the collective delusions of the people. Through her special abilities, she is able to establish a connection with the giants, aiming to dispel these illusions and bring about a more authentic understanding of the terrible truth behind each story of the giants. However, the rejection of this bad faith comes with embracing the absolute freedom and the responsibility that comes with it. This means living in accordance with one's true self and values, despite external pressures and internal fears. This is reflected in Senua's transformation from the first game, where she uses her furies for understanding and empathy with the environment surrounding her. By confronting the giants and uncovering the truth behind their supposed wrath, Senua also helps the villagers see through their delusions and encourages them to take responsibility for their own lives. The giants, therefore, represent the villagers' bad faith, their unwillingness to face the reality of their situation, and their reliance on myths to explain away their hardships. Senua's over the giants is not just a physical triumph, but an existential one, where she helps the villagers move towards a more authentic existence by shedding their fears and false beliefs. These are my thoughts on the plot. What are yours? Let me conclude by saying that amidst all the discussions about the quality of the game, I want to give props to the developers for standing by their ideas in an increasingly homogenized industry. Hellblade 2 is the exact type of game they set out to make, regardless of what's popular or accepted, and in this day and age, that is such a rare thing to see. People wanted the gameplay to be improved, and the developers chose to do it their way, not by adding unnecessary complexity, but by enhancing the intensity and authenticity of the experience. And in this time, in which writers and developers kneel before the needs of the market and political correctness, Ninja Theory has been able to keep its back straight, and for this reason, it must be respected. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please hit subscribe to be notified when I release the next video. Happy mindful gaming, and see you next time.